dedicated to conveying value and interpreting global masterpieces. Hello, this is Sally's Book Club. Today, we're exploring Darwin's classic work, The Origin of Species. This book essentially encapsulates Darwin's lifelong efforts and laid the foundation for evolutionary theory. I believe most people have heard of this book, but few have actually read it. The Origin of Species was published in 1859, over 150 years ago. Britain had just achieved major victory in the Crimean War, with national power at its peak. In America, Lincoln had just become Republican leader, preparing for presidential campaign. China's Antizam dynasty was struggling through the Second Opium War. Under the British Empire's influence, naturalists freely conducted global research, making the Royal Society the world's academic center. Despite prevailing religious beliefs about divine creation, scientists couldn't ignore overwhelming evidence. Thus, evolutionary ideas emerged. Darwin became the culmination of these efforts, having conducted global research aboard HMS Beagle in his youth. In modern terms, Darwin was at least third-generation scientific royalty. His grandfather had proposed early evolutionary concepts. His observations in the Galapagos Islands helped Darwin develop comprehensive evolutionary theory. Chinese people first encountered evolutionary theory through Yan Fu's translation of Huxley's work. Survival of the fittest, through natural selection, became deeply ingrained. Actually, survival of the fittest doesn't fully capture biological complexity. In nature's interplay, organisms develop diverse physical structures and survival strategies. Hence, we use evolution rather than progress. In Origin, Darwin presents extensive evidence and addresses potential doubts comprehensively. Evolutionary theory thus became fundamental to life sciences rather than fragment observations. This 360,000-word book contains 15 chapters, which I'll divide into 3 parts to explain Darwin's evolutionary theory. Part 1. How Darwin constructed the logic of evolution. Part 2. How Darwin addressed challenges to his theory. Part 3. What evidence did Darwin find to support evolutionary theory? First, Part 1. Darwin used 3 chapters to establish evolutionary logic. We'll explain through 3 key points. First, key point: species change through artificial selection. Darwin chose domestication of animals and crops as his starting point, something easily understood. This became the foundation for explaining his evolutionary ideas. Farmers long knew about individual variations: fat vs. lean pigs, tall vs. short rice. Observant people could detect subtle differences. Crucially, these traits could be inherited. Farmers discovered breeding. The fattest pigs produced fatter offspring. Saving best grains for planting gradually improved crops. Through inheritable mutations, humans gradually shaped biological traits. This modification could occur across multiple dimensions. Cattle breeding focused on meat and labor, selecting for size, growth speed, and hardiness. Clear selection criteria resulted in few cattle varieties, with similar traits across regions. Japanese Wagyu and Australian beef cattle show minimal physical differences. Dogs serve diverse purposes: hunting, guarding, herding, sledding, even warfare. Different functions required. varied traits, strength, endurance, scent, detection, or intelligence. Thus, dogs developed greater diversity than cattle. This pattern holds across domesticated animals. Single purpose. Animals like pigs have fewer varieties, multipiscious. Pigeons show greater diversity. Another supporting example is ornamental plants and animals, where diverse aesthetics lead to numerous varieties like flowers and goldfish. More importantly, domesticated species seem to have endless capacity for change. By Darwin's era, animal domestication had existed for thousands of years. Yet new varieties kept emerging, with records for yield, height, and growth rates constantly broken. Darwin concluded organisms possess endless variability. They evolve continuously under selective pressures. If artificial selection causes change, could natural environments do the same? This leads to the second key point. Natural selection also drives biological changes. Wild animals exhibit individual variations in fur, color, size, growth rates, etc. Like domesticated species, these variations are limitless, with new mutations in every generation. Naturalists classify organisms based on physical characteristics. Similar species group into genera. Similar genera then form families. For example, tigers, lions, and leopards form Panthera genus, grouped with Felis into Felidae family. This hierarchical classification ultimately reaches kingdoms like Animalia. Darwin noted subspecies divisions within species, often geographically distributed. Subspecies characteristics strongly correlate with their habitats. Polar bears and brown bears are actually subspecies sharing common ancestry. Polar bears' white fur, thick coats, and large size adapt them to Arctic environments. Brown bears better suit forest habitats, showing nature's selective power like artificial selection. Polar and brown bears share ancestry, just as all dogs descend from wild progenitors. Descendants of this ancestor migrated to different regions, with bears better adapted to polar environments moving northward. Natural selection sculpting Arctic adapted traits. Similarly, forest-bound bears develop distinct features, like dogs bred for different purposes. Darwin compared subspecies across butterflies, beetles, birds, and wild chrysanthemums, finding similar patterns. Natural selection lacks human intentionality, with environmental changes occurring gradually. Superficially, organisms appear perfectly adapted to their environments. Third key point: examine survival competition in stable environments. All organisms tend toward overpopulation. Even slow-breeding elephants could produce 19 million descendants from one pair in 750 years. Fish laying millions of eggs or plants with billions of seeds can explode in population within years. Essential resources: food, territory, sunlight, water, remain limited. Population booms trigger increases in predators and parasites. These checks maintain population equilibrium. This necessitates intense interspecies competition. Competition determines resource, acquisition, and survival against threats. Lush plants dominate sunlight, hardy animals survive plagues. Strong individuals outlast weaker counterparts. This creates internal selection. pressure driving evolution through variation, utilization, con and misconception. Natural selection causes variation rather than acting upon existing variations. French biologist Lamarck believed giraffes developed long necks by wanting to reach tree leaves. In reality, biological mutations are random, neither environmentally directed nor consciously driven. Hairless cats emerge through random mutation, not feline desire to shed fur. Natural selection filters random mutations, favoring advantageous traits through reproductive success. Accumulated variations over generations drive continuous evolution. From this perspective, evolution occurs constantly. Nature's apparent perfection masks constant interspecies competition. Species with similar needs compete. Grazers for grassland, predators for prey, flowers for pollinators. Stable ecosystems rarely feature lethal competition between species. African antelopes and zebras actually consume different plants. However, interspecies competition can sometimes cause population collapse or extinction. This phenomenon wasn't well documented in Darwin's time, making his examples somewhat obscure. Modern examples abound. Governments combat invasive species like Asian carp in U.S. waterways. Species gaining competitive advantages through evolution or invasion isn't new, it's biological tante. Environmentally adapted species outcompete primitive counterparts through natural selection. Life systems upgrade collectively, creating illusion of directional progress in evolution. Why do advanced mammals coexist with primitive marsupials? Evolution branches rather than progresses linearly. The primitive chordate Amphioxus has existed for hundreds of millions of years without evolving into higher animals. Species only need to adapt to their environments, specifically avoid being outcompeted by others in the same ecosystem. Monotremes and marsupials thrived in isolated Australia, New Zealand, lacking placental mammals. Darwin noted European settlers. Mammals caused mass marsupial extinctions in Australia. Today, most Australian marsupials, except kangaroos, face critical endangerment. Amphioxus survives buried in sand, filtering organic particles, avoiding direct competition with vertebrates. Its real competitors are marine worms, not advanced vertebrates. Amphioxus's primitive structure suffices for its niche, needing no complex vertebrate adaptations. Advanced traits regress in unnecessary environments, like cave fish losing eyes. Island insects often lose wings through evolution. Convergent evolution creates similar forms like dolphins, fish, or succulent plants from unrelated ancestors. Succulents evolved fleshy structures independently across plant families. Their plump forms adapted to arid environments through separate evolutionary paths. Thus, origin establishes complete evolutionary logic. Artificial. Natural selection drives change. Survival competition accumulates adaptive variations. Despite Darwin's clear framework, evolutionary theory faced then and still faces baseless challenges. Alright, let's proceed to part 2. In chapters 14 of Origin, Darwin deliberately critiques his own theory from opponents' perspectives. The antithesis of evolutionary theory is intelligent design. This suggests all organisms were created simultaneously by a transcendent being and remain unchanged. Religious creation narratives generally fall under design theory. First challenge: could complex organs like eyes evolve gradually? Darwin admitted contemporary theories struggled to explain complex organs emerging through incremental mutations. However, he noted diverse eye types in nature, from light-sensitive patches in flatworms to pinhole eyes in nautilus. Nautilus eyes use simple pinhole imaging, while humans and octopuses employ sophisticated lens systems. This continuum from simple to complex eyes suggested evolutionary pathways. Other examples, like orchid structures and bee stingers, showed organ evolution possibilities. Darwin argued, multiple evolutionary pathways exist, making claims of impossibility untenable. The eye evolution debate continued until molecular biology confirmed Darwin's hypotheses in late 20th century. Second challenge: why evolve seemingly useless features? If survival matters, why peacocks evolve cumbersome tails or stags grow vulnerable antlers? Design proponents argued this proved a creator's aesthetic preference, a view Darwin systematically dismantled. Darwin explained this through sexual selection. Natural selection ultimately aims for reproductive success. Peacock tails and deer antlers help males attract mates. Similarly, flowers use beauty and nectar to attract pollinators. Darwin viewed biological beauty as serving reproductive purposes. Sexual selection remains crucial in modern evolutionary theory. Modern biology suggests Darwin overemphasized sexual selection. Many features have additional functions undetected in his era. Third challenge: why unique survival strategies evolve in specific species? Giraffes monopolize treetop foliage. Why don't others evolve long necks? Darwin's answer: first mover advantage, giraffes occupy the niche, making competition evolutionarily impractical. Later research confirmed ecological niche occupation blocks similar adaptations in same regions. Ecological niches function like occupied bus seats, preventing later competitors. Thus, Darwin laid groundwork for ecological niche theory. Fourth challenge: are animal instincts evolutionary products? Chapter 8 discusses instincts. Innate skills, like spiderweb building and beehive construction. Unlike distinct physical traits, people struggle to imagine instincts arising through gradual mutations. Darwin noted instincts also inherit and mutate. Domesticated animals tolerate crowded confinement through selective breeding. Pigeons and dogs exhibit diverse behaviors shaped by artificial selection. Studying wild behavior evolution remains challenging as behaviors leave no fossil records. However, modern animal observations reveal evolutionary clues. European cuckoos practice brood parasitism, laying eggs in other birds' nests. This survival strategy is called nest parasitism. Many birds occasionally lay eggs in others' nests due to various pressures. But complete abandonment of parenting, like European cuckoos, remains rare. American cuckoos, close relatives mostly, build nests and raise their young. Migration challenges force American cuckoos to sometimes parasitize nests. Darwin hypothesized European cuckoo ancestors, prioritized migration efficiency through nest parasitism. Observing American cuckoos helps reconstruct European cuckoos' evolutionary path. Similar analysis applies to parasitic wasp, provisioning larvae, or slave-making ants. Instinct evolution faces another challenge, explaining eusocial insects' sterile worker castes. In ant, bees colonies sterile workers labor, while queens monopolize reproduction. If natural selection favors reproductive success, why do sterile worker castes persist? Darwin explained through group selection. Workers share identical genetics with reproductive queens who fulfill propagation. Remarkable insight considering genetics wasn't understood in Darwin's era. Darwin admitted this challenge merely undermined his entire theory. Modern genetics later resolved this through understanding genetic identity and expression regulation. Queens and workers share identical DNA, with queens controlling gene expression in workers. Conceptually, an ant colony functions as a single superorganism. The queen serves as reproductive organs, workers as limbs and organs. Just as most body cells don't reproduce, sterile ants maintain colony functionality. Fifth challenge: why can plants hybridize when animals generally cannot? Chapter 9 examines hybridization's role in speciation, crucial for evolutionary theory. Limited by primitive genetics and flawed plant taxonomy of his time, Darwin, puzzled by animal hybrid sterility, e.g., mules versus plant hybridization, ease. Orchid hybrids, easily created by horticulturalists, contrasted with animal reproductive barriers. Darwin could only catalog hybridization outcomes, unable to discern underlying biological laws. Modern molecular biology reveals gamete compatibility mechanisms too complex for 19th century science. In these chapters, Darwin thoroughly outlined all weaknesses in evolutionary theory, openly acknowledging limitations rather than defending his life's work, crucial for modern evolutionary theory's development. Part 3 details evidentiary support for evolutionary theory. Firstly, Darwin's theory predicts gradual evolutionary changes reflected in fossil records. Theoretically, transitional forms should exist between ancestral and modern species. However, fossil gaps persist for most species except horses and few others. Darwin explained, fossilization requires rare geological conditions. Existing fossils face destruction through tectonic subduction or erosion, few surviving geological processes. Human excavation capabilities further limit fossil discoveries. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Darwin's perspective proved fundamentally correct. During Origin's compilation, Germany discovered Archaeopteryx, crucial transitional fossil in avian evolution. Modern fossil recovery techniques have filled many Darwin-era knowledge gaps. Contrasting fossil gaps. Sudden species, explosions like Cambrian explosion 540 million years ago, perplex scientists. Precambrian strata spanning billions years show minimal animal traces. Within 10-20 million years, post-Cambrian, animal fossils proliferated exponentially. These complex organisms, like trilobites, featured segmented bodies, mineralized exoskeletons, and compound eyes, challenging early Darwinian support among geologists. Darwin lacked convincing explanations then, hoping future fossil discoveries would clarify. Modern solutions. Electron microscopy revealed microfossils, predating Cambrian explosion by 100 million years. Chinese Chengjiang and Wangyan fossil deposits clarified Cambrian biodiversity patterns. Fossil records remain solid evolutionary evidence. A dedicated chapter systematically explains fossil record significance despite earlier references. Fossil layers reveal chronological biological transformations. 100. Mural fossils dominated by dinosaurs, 50-year-old by primitive mammals, 10-year-old showing modern affinities. Ancient fossils, bridge, distinct modern species supporting common ancestry. This aligns with evolutionary theory's concept of shared ancestors. Fossil evidence also explains prehistoric extinctions. Some extinct species clearly relate to modern counterparts. Hipparion, three-toed horse dominated landscapes millions of years ago before extinction. Modern horses. Donkeys exhibit clear evolutionary continuity from Hipparion. Darwin considered this morphological evolution in action. Advanced equines outcompeted primitive forms like Hipparion through natural selection. Other cases show entire groups vanishing, like pterosaurs replaced by birds. This demonstrates historical interspecies competition, sometimes entire clades replacing predecessors, as birds superseded pterosaurs. The following two chapters, in Origin of Species, appear somewhat awkward from modern perspectives. These chapters address design theory arguments now largely obsolete. As creationism itself evolved, limited by 19th century geological, embryological knowledge, Darwin's explanations now seem oversimplified. One chapter discusses biogeography, similarities between species across distant lands, islands, both fossil and extant. Design proponents argued similar freshwater fish on separate continents implied creation, as saltwater-intolerant species couldn't cross oceans naturally. Darwin maintained organisms dispersed beyond expectations, suggesting storms might carry fish eggs across oceans. Modern science attributes this to continental drift, unknown in Darwin's era. Alfred Badner proposed continental drift theory in 1930s, decades after Origin's publication. Another chapter examines taxonomic classification methods. Darwin analyzed morphological anatomical traits and embryological development patterns for classification. Naturalists compared these characteristics to determine biological relationships. Darwin-era taxonomy appears crude today, superseded by genetic analysis, providing objective DNA comparison metrics. Darwin's emphasis on embryological similarities holds less significance in modern biology. With sufficient detailed observation, embryonic development appears more dependent on reproductive methods and uterine egg structures. Genetically, embryonic similarities reflect shared gene expression patterns during specific developmental stages. This resembles how all buildings temporarily use similar scaffolding during construction phases. You wouldn't assume buildings share architects based on scaffolding similarities. These chapters reveal historical scientific reasoning. Final chapter restates evolutionary logic. Overproduction, variation, competition, adaptation, gradual mutation, accumulation, speciation, interspecies competition, drives biological succession visible in fossil records. All organs evolve gradually. Similar organisms share ancestry. Darwin even predicted universal common ancestry. Evolutionary evidence permeates nature, related species, stratified fossils, embryology, vestigial organs. Despite Jo's Gang century knowledge gaps, Darwin, sensing evolution's validity, would revolutionize life sciences, a vision fulfilled. Darwin's revolution succeeded. Modern biology rests on evolutionary foundations, remarkably establishing evolutionary principles without genetics. Darwin remains life science's cornerstone figure. That concludes our origin exploration. Find keynotes below the audio. Until next time.